Okay, everybody, I truly apologize for the delay. 15-minute delay on that. We had a little bit of challenge getting into the presentation. Can everybody see my screen okay? Okay. So the goal for today is a little bit different than last time. First of all, we have a couple of guests. We have Kendall and let's see who else. Kendall, who's working with you right now from our tech squad?
Daniel.
Pardon me?
Daniel Fisher.
Oh, yeah. So we have Kendall and Daniel, and they're here because they're actually ETech cyber or networking students who work for the Boise district. And they do provide tech support within all of our high schools, probably all of our junior highs next year, and in the boardroom. So they're kind of training along with this. So this was a good one for you to see because we struggled to get going. Other than that, it looks like we have quite a few. This is a really small screen, so I apologize. Our goal for today is to review. We have just a couple of responses on the rubric that I sent out. And so really, as we go through those responses, that's more of a start of a conversation than it is for a decision making. So I need to move some things around on my screen here. From our last meeting, we just talked about norm setting. Again, I'll touch on that briefly. Please remember that we are all online. It makes it a little bit difficult, so please stay muted unless you have a question. Feel free to drop in anytime. And I'm really looking forward to getting your thoughts on what you felt about Aztec Tech Prep and Pharmacy Tech, or the PTU, Pharmacy Tech University. This is from the last one. I apologize, I am not truly savvy on Zoom. Okay, so this particular meeting, we're just going to look at those responses. Again, that will be a driver for our conversation. And if you have anything to add, feel free to jump right in. It's not a problem at all. So the one thing about the Pharmacy Tech, both of these adoptions, is that we broke it into several different categories, and we'll just review those in order of what you saw on the rubric. So with that said, we're going to take a look we're going to jump right in and look at the curriculum features, and then we'll go from there. So what you have on the screen, is the average scores that I received for Aztec and for TRC Healthcare. And one thing to remember about these is that this is just a couple of responses, and so as we go through this, please don't think that that's a final by any means. But for the resources identified, everybody still hear me okay? Okay. It looks a little bit different on the screen I'm looking at than what I'm seeing up on the board. But for resources identified about relating to state standards, our score for Aztec was 4 on a 0 to 4 point scale, and for TRC Healthcare was the average was 3.5. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share about identifying the resource identifies the standards? Remember, we looked at the new standards and also the criticality survey from our industry partners. Does anyone have anything on that part they would like to share?
This is Jamie Burns. I felt like the Aztec may have been clearer, but the PTU was easier. It just didn't easily define the state standard, but I felt it addressed the critical skills better than Aztec. I don't know if that makes sense.
Right. And then part of that too is that in terms of outlining the exact standard and aligning to that, I would anticipate that Aztec being a test prep, not a curriculum necessarily, would directly correlate to a standard in that way. So this one didn't surprise me. Does anyone else have anything to share about either one of those in terms of identifying state standards? Try and move. Next one is curriculum features and content, and again, this is curriculum features and content. And if real world scenarios are embedded in the instruction to allow students to make connections to real life situations. And Aztec was overall, from the rubrics I received, was a 4, and TRC Healthcare Pharmacy Tech University PTU was a 3.5. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share about the scenarios embedded in the instruction? With that one, my experience was I struggled a little bit with the computer voice for Aztec. That was one that didn't really speak to me personally, but as I was trying to work through some of the units, that part of it was a bit challenging. Okay, our next curriculum feature and content is that we looked at was materials user-friendly to navigate and it's accurate, navigable and accurate, excuse me. And Aztec, the overall score for that was a 3, and the TRC PTU Healthcare was a 3.5. Navigation is a really tricky one and very important. So our students that are out there, what did you think? Or one of our parents that has a student who looked at it as well. What do you think of it? So I'm asking for a student voice on this.
I had my daughter Grace, this is Jamie Burns, sorry. I had my daughter Grace go through both of them, and she found PTU was the one she found easiest to navigate, and she got really frustrated with Aztec pretty quickly.
What about it, Jamie, it specifically was frustrating for her for Aztec?
It wasn't as easily laid out. There were a lot of small little that you had to click on to figure out what that was for. And it didn't flow well, in her opinion.
Anyone else have anything they'd like to add to that?
I'll say I agree with that. I thought the Aztec was a little, there was a lot of, the voice was slow, because Aztec's a former, let me just make sure it was the former Passashirt, correct?
Right.
Okay, yeah, I just thought the voice was slow. You had to wait. Sometimes I was reading faster than the videos were going, and it just was kind of, you had to really just go at the pace of the voice, and the other was a lot easier to see the outline, see what the content was, see how the video related to it. And I felt like it was just easier to pace myself to go through it.
Thanks, Janelle.
Grace just told me that she actually turned the volume off because of the voice. So everything.
I did the same. I turned it off and would read it, and then would wait until I was allowed to click forward, which I found frustrating.
Okay. Anyone else, anything on that part? Okay. The next part of curriculum feature and content was that the content was organized, the organization was logical and by topic. And with this Aztec, the score was a 4, and the average score for TRC Healthcare PTU was 3.5. We kind of touched a little bit on organization and navigation. Someone give me a specific example or your thoughts on that aspect of it. Or Grace, what does Grace think?
She felt like a computer built the Aztec program and people built the PTU program. I don't know how else to. I thought it was just very, while it is logical, it really did look like it was just programmed in, versus PTU kind of similarly laid out by logic, but in a more friendly manner.
Anyone else have anything they'd like to share with that?
I wondered when I was going through not the Aztec was really clear. There's units were identified, easy to know which each ones were. But what I wondered is if we were looking at a trial version, if I was wondering if from the full version, if it had a bigger, kind of a big scope and overall picture of how it was laid out, because it felt like there was multiple modules from previous years that were the same. So I just wonder if we just kind of got a smorgasbord of a lot of things, but it wasn't in the same format it would be if we got the curriculum. And that was kind of my question I had on there. So because it was alphabetical, but then it would say when you joined it to go the order they wanted you to go through. So that was where I made the assumption it would look different in a true version versus a trial version.
And Aztec was a little late, Chanel, to giving us access to evaluate the curriculum. So I can't speak to that part, but they did indicate that we had full access, even with just a guest pass, so to speak, of what we had. So maybe what you saw is what we would get if we were to select this.
I was more on the TRC healthcare.
Yeah,
that was one I felt like it was a real trial version versus an actual formatted. That's, I made that assumption.
That's correct. Very
different in a true.
TRC was definitely a trial version.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else on content organization? Okay. Next curriculum feature and content question was there are section review questions and or chapter review questions, including higher level critical thinking questions. So the Aztec scored a 4 overall, and TRC Healthcare was a 3.5. Jamia or anyone else who's on, what were your thoughts about that particular?
I felt like if we'd had more, the PTU again was easier, but much to what just said, that if we'd had the full version, if it mimics what we're seeing in this trial version, I anticipated that those items would be there. It's just Aztec, it was very clear. It's somewhat suggested by the trial PTU program.
Anyone else? Even though we're starting late, we're going really fast, so I appreciate it. Okay. Next curriculum feature and content is the tech center platform images are relevant and will facilitate learning. Aztec overall was a 3. I think this is kind of where we're going to see for the rest of the scores that are coming in, a difference between Aztec and TRC PTU. Aztec was a 3, TRC was a 4. Who has thoughts they'd like to share about that aspect of it? Maybe I hate to put Grace on the spot again, but does she have any thoughts about that part of it?
She just went through, sorry, she's leaving for work. So she, she just found that it's hard to, she liked how there were PDF, there were other she could easily go to. She did appreciate the Aztec textbook, but she didn't feel like she could flip back and forth very easy. She really liked the note-taking part for the different drugs, because if she does something like that, she said that's what I'm gonna have to be learning, not just the role of the job, but the actual medications. And she felt like that the PTU platform did a better job of promoting that. I don't know, the other word she used was dry. Aztec is dry.
LASSP. Anyone else like to speak to text platform images or facilitating that? Okay. Now we're switching into the assessment piece, which is always kind of interesting. So I'm excited Grace won't be joining us. It's great to hear, I think, from students these adoptions on what they feel of the assessments. But for this, multiple types of assessments are provided for assessing student learning and informing instructional decision-making for each topic. Aztec overall scored a 2 in our rubric responses, and TRC Healthcare PTU 3.5. Does anyone have thoughts on that they'd like to share?
I like that there were little check-in points kind of throughout as you travel through. So in the TRC healthcare, I felt like that was helpful to have those.
And the unit that I did for both, I struggled through one a little bit. I didn't figure out the pacing like the both of you did, or Grace for that matter. But I did like a little bit of a check-in on your part as well. I'm sorry, Jamie, were you going to say something?
No. Nope.
Any other thoughts on this part? The next ventured area, and we're getting towards the end, is to provide strategies for teachers to identify common student errors and misconceptions. On this, the Aztec was a 0. TRC Healthcare was a 3. Chanel, I hate to put you on the spot, but this is one I think that your insight would be really valuable. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, what I could tell from the opening video from the TRC is that it did address it, and it had the ability for the teacher to kind of do check-ins and where students were in moving through the material and going through there. And I didn't see anything with that with Aztec. So I think with that online platform, it'd be really helpful to have those check-in points. Yeah, so that, yeah, I did, like I said, I that's what I got from the video. I didn't see anything on the Aztec one, and I don't recall any from the old Pass Assured of them having anything beyond the tests.
Jamie, do you have any thoughts on that part of it?
We just looked mainly at the video when it talked about everything that the rubrics on the actual PTU site going through. And again, yeah, we couldn't find anything on Aztec other than Grace said she would be able to, if the instructor said, go look in the textbook, she'd be able to find that. But other than that, she didn't see a lot of interaction with the instructor.
And the next, the one that we assessed was assesses students in a variety of proficiencies. Chanel, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I felt there was more in the TRC healthcare, a lot more options of being able to look at things and versus from the Aztec. It just felt more comprehensive overall for looking at those different competencies.
Jamie, would you like to add to that, or anyone else? Now we're shifting to teacher instructional support, well, second to the last section. And what we evaluated here was materials reflect a variety of ways to teach all levels of learners and model content to support learners. Aztec, the score was from the rubrics was a 3, and from TRC Healthcare, PTU was a 3.5 on that part. And I think it's always a little bit challenging for an online platform to kind of differentiate among learners, and so we kind of have to look for one of those early questions about how is the material presented? Is it engaging? Is it interactive? To kind of get at a question like this, because you can only really, when a teacher's sheltering instruction for a student or modifying to help meet wherever they are, it's a lot of flexibility in that, and it's hard for an online program to do that without just ratcheting down or maybe going sideways with trying to create a lab or something along those lines. But Jamie, I'm really curious in your thoughts about this part, about the materials reflecting a variety of ways to teach, and then we'll come back to Chanel next.
Similarly, we looked at the different rubrics. Once I got Grace into PTU, I really couldn't get her out because Aztec really just turned her off. So I have to tell you, we looked a lot more at it. She basically was telling me that she could move around. She, in fact, was like, I'd like to continue to play with this. But getting her back to do stuff with Aztec, it looked like I was going to pull her teeth.
Okay, and that speaks a little bit to our ability to retain students in the program, which is a goal, and historically has been a bit of a challenge with this particular program. Chanel, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I was just thinking, I agree with you on an online platform. You kind of have it in the way they've provided it, but I felt like the TRC had a lot more. Well, it had multiple more modules to get through it. So to go back, I liked the note-taking formats. I liked the structural supports that they put in place. And as I was going through it, I felt like there was multiple things that I could do as a teacher with those as a jumping off point to get more of that multiple ways to approach content, which is why I think you have a teacher there to help with it, to add that depth. I agree with Grace. The Aztec I thought was, and I hope this isn't bad to say, but it was just kind of mind-numbing boredom listening to the voice. I wanted to just read through the content, but it was just kind of, the technology felt old, is what it felt like to me, and I felt like the technology on the other was a little more up to date and a little more interactive.
She said best case scenario, they turn off the voice and they have the instructor actually just using the materials to teach.
Yeah.
Otherwise, yeah.
Yeah, and even then you have to wait for the video recording to finish before you could click to get to the next information. So I felt like there was a lot of this. I found myself, reading through the slides and then getting distracted with other things, waited till I could get time to click on it again. And I thought, oh, that's a recipe for disaster. If that's, when you start getting distracted, it's hard to get back on board.
Anything else?
She said you'd need to take away all the students' phones if you did, because they'd all be on it within seconds.
And this is gonna sound really bad, but I thought I probably would be too. I mean, I wouldn't be, but I'd want to be. It was tough at times. It just moved a little. The pace felt a little slow.
Okay, thank you. And our next teacher instructional support is ancillary materials provide practice questions, problems, test questions, and activities that are well correlated to the curriculum. Aztec was a 3 and TRC was a 4. Chanel, would you like to start on that one?
Sure. I think it's kind of more of what I've said. I think that it was more, I did one, I dove into one, I did a few of the units, and I dove into one that had more math problem solving and pricing and those types of things. And I thought they were really helpful to go through in there. And so I thought the practice was good, and the questions seemed to make sense. And when you would on the TC, and that was not on the Aztec, but on the other. And the other was that I felt like when you'd miss a question, because sometimes I just jump in and try to do a test just to see what happened. And, if you'd miss it, it would circle back and you'd have to get it again, but it may be written in a different way. And so I felt that was helpful.
I did the same with TCU with some test questions. And actually I just I jumped to a test and just took it blind. And of course I missed them. At pharmacy tech not being a strength of mine. But it was interesting how it did take me right back to some additional learning. Jamie, do you have any thoughts on that? Or Grace, or any of her thoughts?
No, I just agree with all that's been said there. That's me. Grace was not, but
now we're just going to move into some of the additional comments that came in from the online rubrics that I sent out. We'll start with Aztec. It was my daughter felt she would need a lot of support understanding where things are located. And then again, this is Aztec. The layout is somewhat dry and not as engaging. She became frustrated with navigation. Again, Aztec, she did not like the text link and not as user friendly. And then for TRC Healthcare, the trial was difficult to tell the overall structure, and a question about other more resources to help guide students. But really with that, I think from the tone of the conversation, really from here we'll make a recommendation to the board on which of the two curriculum that we like. And we have a couple of people on that have been silent so far. So Jordan, are you still on? It looks like you are from mine. Jamie, if you were the sole decision maker on this, which would you prefer? Now I'm putting you on the spot. Which would you prefer to see Grace or other students have as their curriculum for the class? Of course, having a teacher, but just for a curriculum adoption, would you prefer the Aztec or the TRC Healthcare Pharmacy Tech?
TRC Healthcare. In fact, when your next slide came up and I saw Aztec in big letters, I was like, "Oh my God, no!" I thought that was the final. I'm like, no.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. I tried to balance them back and forth for equal play on that imagery. And Chanel, how about you?
I agree. I think that TRC Healthcare is much more comprehensive, has a lot more resources. It felt a little more overwhelming just because it looks so huge in that trial format. So I'm hoping that when we get the final one or see it, it's a little more clear, but I think it just has a lot more, opportunities to move through the material versus just hearing a voice and then having to refer back to a textbook or those things. So I liked it a lot better.
So is the committee okay with me recommending TRC Healthcare, obviously for our curriculum? At this point, our next step is, I think for the July board meeting, what we'll do is I'll review the process with the board. That's traditional. Review our recommendation, the committee's recommendation for the adoption. And then the next step is we start putting this in place so that when students come in, they can start working on TRC Healthcare on day one is our goal. So I truly appreciate you making time, Dr. Burns especially. I know it's very hard for you, but your insight is imperative, and I think in terms of trying to meet not only the legislation of having parent input, but really the value of hearing what Grace had to say. And I'm sad that we couldn't get Jordan. I'm not sure if you're not able to communicate over this, but it's really important to have the voices of everyone involved in selecting our curriculum. And so I appreciate the process, and I appreciate both of your participation. Any last questions before we close out for today?
Wait, I don't get my picture with a fire truck this time?
No, Jamie, I'm sorry, but we are going to have a residential construction curriculum adoption soon, and you might get it with a tiny house. So I'll keep in mind for that if that's all right. Okay. Well, truly, thank you, everyone. I truly appreciate it. We do have, I think, 10 views of our last meeting, last I checked on YouTube. Maybe we'll break that with this particular meeting. I doubt it, but I appreciate your time and your thoughts most importantly, and our recommendation will be TRC Healthcare.
Okay,
Thanks. Have a great summer.
Thanks, Jeff.